Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host from In Heights Sites, Nathan Heights. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast. Although my name is different today, I need to change that real quick. How's it going, Nathan? How you doing, my man?
Good, bro. I actually just noticed it said Drunk Turkey Show on there.
For those that may not know, that is my secondary podcast.
Yeah, so, good to be back on the show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Steelers are now 6-2. They just beat up on the two New York teams, most recently the New York Giants. A game that I thought maybe perhaps the Steelers could have and should have probably put a few more points on the board. I think they lost a couple points there. First and foremost, what were your thoughts on the last week's game?
Really what I would say on last week's game, I would probably say was expected in the sense of beating the Giants. I think most people probably had that happening. It was good just to see the offense have another week of moving the ball. Thought they really moved the ball well, even though they had 9 points at half. But pretty pleased. There's some defensive things that happened that we can kind of talk about that don't think it was their best defensive game that they've played. But they had some moments at the end of the game that mattered, so the Giants didn't start getting a little bit of momentum or anything like that. But heading in your bye 6-2 was probably the best case scenario for this team, and that's where they're at. But overall, like, pretty pleased with some things from Monday, and I like just kind of seeing the offense just continue to move forward in a very productive way that we haven't seen in quite some time. And Arthur Smith already has 3 400-yard games, and Matt Canada had none in 44 games. So.
Yeah, the Matt Canada train is gone, and good riddance. Arthur Smith, I think that over the last few games, this offense has kind of gotten, in my opinion, a little bit better and better. Even though they didn't put up the points on the scoreboard as they did against the Jets, I felt like, especially in the passing game, passes were more crisp. They were more on time. There was less underthrown passes, in my opinion. I think the only one that I saw that was clearly an underthrow and just done so lightly was the one to Scotty Miller down the seam there. He had his guy beat, and if he just puts it out there maybe another 2 yards, I think he runs under it and gets it. But it's still a second game, you know what I mean? So I think that he still has some, rust to get off of him. And but that pass to George Pickens right there along the sidelines where it was inbounds. This is the one that was inbounds, not the touchdown. But that one where it just kind of went right on the money right there for George to get 2 feet in bounds.
Right.
That was huge. I mean, I haven't seen a play like that since probably like 2017, Ben Roethlisberger, 2016.
Yeah.
That
100%.
Just drop it in the bucket right there where only the receiver could get it. And the receiver make a tip, a Tony toe tap type play there and get his feet in bounds. It was impressive game. I think I'm more excited about how this team is looking this week more than so last week. And I think they're just going to continue to, go up in the upward trajectory. So, just kind of going over everything though. Let's do let's talk. I know you said you wanted to talk a little bit more about the defense there. What was your biggest disappointment with the defense against the Giants?
They weren't getting Daniel Jones on his ass, man. That was my biggest defensive one. Alex Highsmith had a lot of pressures. I thought that he had a fantastic game, but they weren't getting him on his ass. They let Tyrone Tracy run 130 rushing yards on him. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. And they are statistically one of the better run defenses in the NFL right now. But when you have kind of a no-name year 1, year 2 guy running all over you, again, the linebackers the inside linebackers haven't been very effective this season as I thought they would be. And I think that's something going the second half of the season that has to change. You're not going to have perfection ever, but I think the inside linebackers has been a weak part of this defense throughout the season. I think most people can agree. There's been some good things, but from an overall standpoint, they haven't really been quite as effective as most hoped. Not getting Daniel Jones on his ass until end of the game, I think, was a problem. It allowed for a few big plays down the field to happen, such as Darius Slayton. Malik Neighbors was beating that zone defense quite a bit in the second half. That was a problem. Dante Jackson struggled. But I'm not going to crap on him. He's been pretty good throughout the season. That was a big part in terms of some of those big plays down the field that kept the Giants kind of momentum going. So I'm not going to sit and complain a lot about the game. There's really not a lot to complain about. Russ played really well. Arthur Smith called a great game. Najee Harris had another great week. Calvin Austin had the best game of his career. Steelers special teams had another good week. TJ Watt obviously showed himself up later in the game. But really just some of the aspects against the Giants, Daniel Jones and them kind of running over is a little bit of what was a little bit of a problem to watch as that game was going on, especially as you're going to start facing some of these teams in the second half of the season. You're really going to have to tighten that up.
Yeah, I think that the speed of Tyrone Tracy may have, came as a little bit of a, maybe not a shock, but I don't think it was as expected. And he was really able to do some pretty crazy things. I mean, he was able to get away from the defense. When it comes to the sacks, they did get Jones down 4 times. There was a strip sack by TJ. I know early on in the game it didn't appear that way, but as the game progressed, I think that the pressure did come there. But the running game was the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest issue that I saw. I thought the Steelers defense did well against Malik Neighbors, even though he had some receptions and some yards. He didn't have a touchdown, and they kept him out of those type of situations. But
yeah, they played a fine game. I'm not one of these fans that cherry picks. Like if they win, that's the ultimate goal. And I think if they play well doing it, that's what you want. Sometimes there's some wins that are a little unfulfilling, but I'm not one of these fans that cherry picks crap. I'm just like, if talking about some of the things that weren't on the positive side, because that comes with the territory. Those are some of the things, but I thought they played a fine game. I thought they did.
Yeah. And you know what? That comment you made about Calvin Austin, I told everybody.
You did.
I put him in your fantasy this week.
You did. And I'm happy for him that he's actually finally getting to have an opportunity to showcase what he can do. A lot of people have overlooked him in a way where he isn't really much more than a special teams guy heading into the season, just given he missed his rookie year. Last year didn't do much in the Matt Canada offense, who did. So being able to get him utilized, because he's not big, but he offers so much speed and burst that it's great that he's getting opportunity to get in the open field, and Russ is hitting him with anticipation. Just look at the moon ball for his touchdown. It's great just being able to see guys like that get an opportunity. And even the Van Jeffersons and stuff like that, still he had a really good game himself. And that's a credit to Russell Wilson of being able to get these guys involved to their strengths and get them involved early on. Pat Freiermuth wasn't much of a factor, but Pickens a little bit, Calvin, obviously, Van, those 3 guys, Russ did a really good job of getting them the ball and getting them opportunities to make a play. We'll talk a little bit about some wide receiver news later on, but yeah, I think the offense was very pleasing to watch. Jaylen Warren looks to be healthy, which is good. They really need him. But it's night and day, man. It's night and day, and it's honestly very refreshing to actually be excited to watch this offense. Because
I agree.
It's been 3-4 years since we've actually had excitement.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
And, just to kind of finish that Calvin Austin comment.
Like, I actually wish we were able to watch Russell Wilson play tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, dude.
When's the last time we could say that about a Steeler quarterback?
That's been a while.
It's been a while. Been a while. So, but yeah, if you're a Steeler fan, you should be content. You should be satisfied with what they're playing. They're exceeding a lot of people's expectations, which I'm not really sure why people really doubt them in the first place. In the way of like not being competitive, they're better than being competitive this year. a lot of people are coming back around with doubting Russell Wilson, which isn't me. I never doubted him. I just, at the time, wasn't on the side of benching Fields, but I was completely okay with Russ getting the shot, seeing what he could do. And obviously that's paid off. And I've been a full believer that he still could go. And I'm happy that he is looking like Seattle Russ right now.
Yeah, I wasn't always convinced on Russ. Again, I'm part of a something called Steel Curtain Network, and even amongst them, with my other crew there that I have, we have what's called a Slack channel where we can talk to each other. And as soon as the offseason hit and rumors began to spread about who was going to be a quarterback, and before it ever happened, or even there was news that Russell Wilson was coming in, we had a source, close to the Steelers, or maybe potentially in the Steelers business, or whatever you want to call them, the team. It's not really the team, but well, anyways, I really don't know who it is, supposedly. Well, anyway, I think I figured it out. They haven't told me who he is, but I'm pretty sure I have an idea of who this source is. Well, anyways, the sources had spoken to the guys there, the editor and whatnot, and they said that the Steelers were in on Russell Wilson like a couple of weeks before anything went down. And I was like, man, I really hope not, and I know that there was some talks about Justin Fields, and at that moment I was like, I'd rather have Justin Fields than Russell Wilson. And it wasn't until Russ got on the team, and then I started looking at what he was doing the year before and how he seemed like he was being handcuffed in Denver. It seemed like the plays that they were drawing for him or making him, try to accomplish were in the middle of the field type of plays where he's not that comfortable. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like they were doing a lot of almost a play like they were treating Justin Fields. They cutting the field in half, roll out this way, only have a couple of options, didn't open up the entire field. And I felt that he still was able to be successful with 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And so I was like, if the Steelers would have gotten that last year or something very similar to that, I thought the Steelers would have had a really, really good chance of being a very competitive team. So I got excited around that time. And, once he came in and it sounded like he had bought in, and I was all aboard. Then the Steelers go out and get Justin Fields. And I was excited. And I thought maybe perhaps he can be the future. And I still think that there's that possibility. But I had wanted to see Russ for a while. And I'm so glad that we were able to see him. And Mike Tomlin made that decision because, I think that the way the Steelers are playing the offense right now are playing to his strengths. Throwing on the outside, Steelers haven't been a team that throws over the middle very often. And so I think this offense suits his skill set, what he wants to do. And, I think that if Arthur Smith could get the best out of Ryan Tannehill, why couldn't he get the best out of Russell Wilson?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. And he is right now. This is looking like, I'm not going to say prime, but this is looking like Wilson more like when he was still productive with Seattle toward the end. And that's still a great thing.
Well, what would he be? What would he need to do better to be in prime, to be considered his, one of his better seasons? Is it the rushing total needs to be higher? And that would be because I think the way he's slinging the ball, especially in this last week, if he can continue that.
Yeah.
I'm going to say
Russell Wilson. I'm going to say, the mobility factor. I'm going to say, his deep ball has always been maybe the best part of his game, but it's really more so the mobility factor and a little bit more not counting when he's in doing play action or anything. I'm not talking about that. More mobility, more a little bit of a rush there, but I would also say in terms of prime Russell Wilson, of throwing on the run. And I'm not talking about where he's a little bit of what he's done so far, where he's throwing 10 yards. I'm talking about on the run, anticipation, hitting the guy on a deep post or something like that. Like that stuff's prime Russell Wilson. So those are things that you're not really going to get, and that's okay. He doesn't need to do that anymore. But his arm, his deep ball, his accuracy, all that stuff like that is on point, and that is prime Russell Wilson right there, and that's what they need to continue to get out of him.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I agreed to a certain extent that the tangible stuff may have decreased, but I think even like with Ben Roethlisberger, early on in his career, he wasn't as successful as he was until he got into his 30s, and then he had the killer bees. Not
mhm,
late in his 30s, but late early 30s, 34, 30, 33. I mean,
yeah,
that's when you were seeing the 2014, 15, 16 season, and those were the times, in my opinion, where he was the most successful. And if obviously, if you were starting a franchise, you would have wanted to start with a younger Ben Roethlisberger. But if you were trying to win a Super Bowl that specific year, you would have changed. You would have taken the 2015, 16 Ben Roethlisberger, you know,
absolutely.
versus the
Yeah.
2005
No,
for
dude,
that
I'm
specific
completely
year.
okay. I'm completely okay with how Russ is playing.
Mhm. Right. So what I'm saying is like he may not have the mobility,
Mhm,
but if he's continues in this direction, because one of the things that I've seen that in this year that I haven't seen out of Russ, even out of Seattle, was a little bit more of decisiveness.
mhm,
He's a little bit more decisive where he wants to throw the ball. He's getting the ball out a little bit faster. He's taken a couple of sacks, but not all of them have been his fault. Like in years prior, where he's taken a few sacks because he's holding on to the ball.
mhm,
Broderick Jones is probably, about worth half of the sacks that he's had. And there was a couple of sacks up the middle against McCollum, but he was seeing a very strong interior Giants defense. And
mhm.
so, not necessarily because he's holding on to it. And I think that if we can continue to see this decisive, accurate thrower of the football, even if he's not targeting the middle of the field, that's never been something he's done before. I think that he's backing teams up, which is allowing the rest of the team to run. I think this could be one of the better versions of Russ if he continues in this trajectory than what
I hope
we've
so.
seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. Um, yeah, so outside of the Monday Night Football game, obviously with the Steelers with their bye week,
Mhm.
how concerned, like, do you, based on how maybe you felt earlier on in the offseason when the schedule came out, how are you feeling now with the second half of the schedule?
The only concern I think I'm more confident in what I didn't think I was going to be confident in, and more concerned in areas I thought I would be less concerned in.
Mhm,
For instance, I'm more confident with the offense. I think that some of the defenses they've already faced are quite a bit tougher than the defense they're going to face. Obviously, they're going to see a few defenses down the line, like the Kansas City Chiefs defense is doing very well. The Ravens defense can't, everybody can just throw on them. The Bengals defense is non-existing. Maybe the Browns might give the Steelers some push there, but for the and then you have the Eagles, but for the most part, the offense, I think that they match up well with a bunch of these teams' defenses and where they lack. The offenses, though, that the Steelers will be facing upcoming are going to be a lot more. Um, it's going to be a higher tier of offense that we're going to see than what we've seen earlier on this season. And to me, although the defense has played well and they've had a lot of splash plays and interceptions and turnovers and key moments, this defense has been a little bit shakier as far as giving up yards and things, that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, because with a better or a stronger offense, do those teams get in the end zone? Do those
right,
teams not lack the discipline to hold on to the ball in a certain manner? They're good for a reason,
mhm,
and that's the part that concerns me is this defensive side, and I'm not sure how it's going to fix, because on the offensive side, we're going to see some players come back. We're going to see the Cordell Patterson. We're going to see Zach Frazier. Defensively, we got Corey Trice and Cam Sutton. Do you think that's really going to move the needle that far? You know what I'm saying? Better than what they are, especially against the run, when those
mhm,
aren't positions that are up front.
right,
So where are you at on this? Because I'm concerned about our defense.
mhm. Yeah, I think that there is a certain level there, um, again, it to me, it goes back to the linebackers. They really need to have a strong second half. Patrick Queen's been, I want to say, a little disappointing this season.
That's fair.
Landon Roberts, he's just kind of there. He's had a few big plays this season, but again, like he's not really going to move a lot for you. Maybe at the goal line, but Peyton Wilson, he's just a young rookie who's had some flash a little bit this year. But I've kind of go back to them. Getting Trice and Cam Sutton back is a good thing in the sense of having a little bit more reliability in your secondary. Corey Trice was doing good things before he got hurt. Cameron Sutton, we'll have to kind of see what he is at this point. I don't really want to base him off last year with 1 year with Detroit, but he knows what the Steelers do. He's been here, so he might be a little bit of a boost there, just depending on what packages, if they're in a dime package or if certain passing downs or maybe some different things like that. Yeah, that's not really going to play an impact in terms of the run. I think really specifically the pass rush isn't a concern, nor should it be a concern. It's really more so once they start facing some of these teams with your Henrys and your Chubbs, because he's back and he's going to get a little healthier by the time they play them. And your Saquons and guys like that, that's going to be a test. That's going to be a test when you play some of those teams. So they're really going to need all hands on deck in terms of being able to, especially again, it comes down to linebackers for me. I think their defensive line's been strong, their pass rush is strong, but the linebackers have been a problem. That's going to need to change come the second half. So I don't want to say I have a lot of concern defensively. I still think they have one of the better defenses in the league. They're not the best, but in my opinion, they have the best pass rush. They have one of the best defensive lines, and that's fantastic. The secondary, it can give up some big plays, but I still have full confidence in the way Dante Jackson's been this season. And Elliott and Minka, again, hasn't had the splash, but I still think he's very effective. It comes down to linebackers, man. And I think if we're going to see more collapse from that, then we're going to have a problem.
I agree. I have to ask if Mon Adams is out for the season. He is not, but he's not coming back anytime soon, from what I understand. I think that's going to be another maybe almost 3 to 4 weeks before we see his return, and which would be good. But now turns the question, right? We've had a lot of rumors going around when it comes to the wide receiver trade. But in my opinion, I think the Steelers would be more suited if they got a bigger guy up front when it comes to stopping the run. I've noticed that the Steelers team, there's a lot of cutbacks. You know what I'm saying? When they're going up against a defensive, an offense, when they're running the ball, when the offense is successful, it's when you have a back that can run one way and then see the open cut and come back and just burst through. And that's what the Giants were doing to the Pittsburgh Steelers this game. And it just felt like, and even Cam Hayward said it, that the defensive linemen just weren't getting out their blocks right. And with Martavius Adams out for a considerable amount of time, wouldn't you think that the priority should be up front on the defensive side if there is somebody available to trade versus a wide receiver?
Well, if Adams is going to be out for a while, that they have Logan Lee and Lowry and guys like that, I think, and Loudermilk that they would plug in and play. Having Benton, Hayward, and Ogunjobi all healthy is, I think, in terms of them, why maybe it wouldn't be quite a priority. I think that maybe you could even look into a tackle or something like that, because they just released that Dylan Cook guy. And Broderick Jones has been a major liability on the right side, and I don't think it's all his fault. But I think maybe right tackle outside of wide receiver could be something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't really go out of my way too much to swing a defensive lineman, because you have those three guys up front healthy, and maybe give an opportunity to one of those guys that I mentioned. I still think wide receiver is the main priority. And the reason why, once they start getting into more of the nitty part of their schedule, I just don't think that, like Van Jefferson, for example, is sustainable. I just don't. He's not that kind of wide receiver. He might pull out 2-3 good games throughout the season, but that's not him. That's not what I think the team expects either. And that's why I still lean toward wide receiver being the most important position, because the sustainability concern. And I think that once you start playing some of these division games, a lot of times they're close, but you're going to need some extra firepower on the outside. And Van Jefferson isn't going to cut it. And there's going to be some times where Calvin Austin isn't going to cut it. So as of right now, I 100% believe that the Steelers have been trying to acquire wide receiver. Just came out 2 hours ago. They tried to get Christian Kirk. They were getting ready to put a deal in place for that. He broke his collarbone. Christian Kirk would have been a fantastic get for this team. Obviously didn't happen. Ayuk didn't happen. Adams didn't happen. There's still guys out there. Darius Slayton, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen possibly, which, I mean, Adam Thielen hasn't really played much this season, and he's a little bit of an older guy, but it's at least a little bit of something there. Who's the other guy? There's another guy. Oh, Cortland Sutton's name's been coming up again through some Denver Broncos guys. The Steelers have been on him throughout the offseason. Maybe if Denver loses this weekend to Baltimore, maybe they might that might go up a little bit more. That door might open a little bit more. I'm sure Russ would love to get him back and play with him. Calvin Ridley, I think his contract's a little too much. I don't see them pulling the trigger on him. But honestly, Jacoby Myers and Darius Slayton, I think, would be very valuable gets. And Darius Slayton's free agent next year. I believe Jacoby Myers is, or he might have one more year left. But anyway, it would probably be more of a rental perspective for those guys. But I really think they could provide good production come the second half of the season, the last 9 games. But the fact that Denver, some guy or two that covers the Broncos, supposedly him, you always take this stuff with a grain of salt, but that they're not shutting or turning the phone down on a Cortland Sutton deal. Maybe if they lose to Baltimore this weekend, that could open that door a little bit more.
But they're not really out of it. And I feel
not.
that,
No,
when
not.
it comes to Cortland Sutton, he was supposed, the rumor was that the Steelers were going to give away a couple of picks to the 49ers, and they were going to try to acquire Cortland Sutton. And the reason it didn't work out is because the Broncos didn't trade him. And they wanted too much for him, I guess more than a second and a third that the Steelers were willing to give up. And, if that be the case, I mean, they're going to probably want a lot now. And to be honest with you, I know hindsight is 2020, but given the receivers the Steelers were in on, kind of glad that they didn't end up landing those receivers. And the price tag on those receivers were pretty high. And I don't think that if you were willing to go much higher than what, they were valued at then, with what's left, I mean, you're looking for, somebody who is probably not to that same level as the guys that were obviously there, earlier on. But, to me, I think that if the Steelers go out and get a receiver, I don't think that with Arthur Smith's offense, I just find it very difficult that they're going to get a receiver that's going to be demanding a lot of attention. If you looked at the way the ball has been passed around these last few games, it's been quite a few targets to quite a few different players, but the majority of it also being Pickens, who's already shown some issues when it comes to not getting the ball as much. I think that they would probably go with maybe a Tyler Boyd. You think the Steelers could go out there and get him off the Tennessee Titans team?
They probably could, just given the fact that he's on a 1-year deal, and they would be able to be on him for the rest of the season and not be bombarded with anything future-wise. They, I think, had a level of interest in him, just not as much as Tennessee did in terms of the contract spot. But, I mean, at this point, you're entering the second half of the season. That could be, that could be a name to keep eye on. He hasn't done anything this year, but I don't necessarily think that's on him completely.
I was going to say, I don't think it's
no. I mean, they're a freaking mess. So I think I really think Steelers fans would probably take almost anybody at this point in terms of just a guy that can come in and give somewhat of production. I agree. They don't need to go get a high end guy. They don't need to go get a guy that's going to demand 8 targets a game. I think the names I put out there, Jacoby Myers, Slayton, guys like that, those aren't high target type guys. Those are guys that are those guys to me are B- players, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's not a knack on them. That's just the reality of where they're at in their career and what they provide. And I think that would be a great thing for the Steelers if you get something like that. I even think Christian Kirk was kind of around the same ballpark as those two guys, and the Steelers seem to be interested in him. So
Yeah.
I think between Kirk, Myers, Darius Slayton, I think all three of those guys in the same are in the same ballpark in terms of kind of that player grade where they are in the NFL, around a B or so, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You win with guys like that. You can win with guys like that. Jaime, what's up, man? Mike Williams. Yeah, I mean, they're still going to be in on him too. Adam Thielen, like I said. So there's still guys out there. It's just really going to be a matter of who's going to pick up the phone and everything like that. I don't know. I think the Giants want to try to hold on to Darius Slayton, but if you're the Giants, it's like, dude, like you guys are probably going to win what 3-4 games this year. Like, why wouldn't you want a later round draft pick? I mean, like seriously, it's what the Panthers got. So I don't see why, if you're a team, why you're going to hang on to a guy on an expiring contract that you're probably not going to give a second contract to.
They basically gave Deontay Johnson away to the Ravens.
Pretty much it.
I think it was a swap from 5th to 6th. And so you're probably seeing like the Ravens, 5th pick being probably in the bottom 6 picks, 7 picks, somewhere around there. You can probably see them picking around 23, 25 relatively, this year. And if the Panthers are picking first, you're literally just swapping picks for like, I don't know, 7 picks.
Yeah.
In a very late round. Like
about it. Really, the Deontay trade, like the Panthers dealing for him was more so of just being able to give Bryce Young somebody to help develop him. But obviously that's been a disaster. So like, there's no point in hanging on to him anymore. Interesting in terms of with him being the Ravens, but yeah, something's got to give with this wide receiver trade because the Steelers have been in the market since March of trying to get another guy. And here we are in the beginning of November. So something's got to give with it. I do believe they are going to do something. Who knows who it's going to be, but I think between all the guys that we've named, between us and everybody in the chat, that's probably good. It's going to be one of those guys. It has to be. I'd be surprised if there would be somebody that they would pull out of their ass that was not talked about.
How strong do you think Steeler fans are going to react if come Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, the Steelers don't make a wide receiver?
I think they'll be pissed off. Yeah, I think they'll be pissed off, and Khan will get some crap. I do.
I do too. I think that people.
I mean, I'll be honest
too.
I won't be too thrilled about it. Like, I'll still have confidence in their offense that they'll be able to put up numbers throughout the season, the rest of the way. But I still won't be too thrilled because I really do think that they need somebody else that's going to give some kind of production to this group, especially as you're going to start playing some of these teams where you're going to need a little bit more of a boost offensively. You're going to need some guy, like you said. You don't need to go get somebody that's seeking 10 targets a game. You don't need to do that. But a guy that's going to give you some chances, a guy that's going to give you some opportunity, a guy that has a little bit of a track record. That's what would make the most sense, just all things considered, with who's available. And I do think they will pull it off, just given the amount of effort they have put in of trying to get somebody. And it would honestly feel really disappointing and unfulfilling if all this time, all these months that have gone by, that they were not able to, or that they tried to get somebody and they just did not. That's just going to feel very flat to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it could. I think it also maybe shows a little bit of confidence in the guys that they do have. But, I think it's probably 70% chance that something happens with a wide receiver before the trade deadline. But I think that the chance that they don't get anybody as far in the wide receiver room, as far as any type of big trade or anybody that's going to, take the field immediately, get on that's going to be worthy of getting on a moving bus in 1 week. Probably not. I don't think so. And so, I think that I think they got a former second rounder from Arizona or something like that here recently, didn't they?
Wait, what?
Off of the practice squad. He's on the practice squad, but he was a former second round pick at one point. Oh gosh, what was his name?
Oh, Andy Isabella?
Yeah.
That guy's worthless. Guy's not going to play one snap this season.
Yeah, but he's got the pedigree.
He didn't have any pedigree. He hardly even played.
So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it works. But I think it might show a little bit of confidence. But in my opinion, as the way it sits today, I think that I'm a little bit less confident that it gets done than I was before. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, just kind of moving on from that, though, last thing I want to bring up when it comes to, this last game is I wanted to get your opinion on that 2 feet, no catch with George Pickens. I know by the letter of the law, because I went and looked at it, and it says that has to get both feet down. But there was another controversial play that went the other way this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And, by the rule of the law, he was in. But how do you feel about those 2 plays together?
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, honestly. I think it might be something they might have to go and look at, because you have 2 feet in, but the fact that you had George Pickens, who double tapped twice, so he has full possession of the football. He's in the end zone. He double tapped his foot twice. And then you have Garrett Wilson, who gets 1 foot in with a shin down that scores. So it's very confusing and it's very blurry between those lines. And I know that you can look at and say, oh, well, he had a shin down. That's a part of the NFL rulebook. Having a knee or a shin or an elbow down, whatever it is, okay, that's a part of the rulebook. So that was a part of his touchdown. Pickens needed both feet in because he didn't have a shin or an elbow situation or something like that, so it doesn't count. It needs to be something that needs to be looked at, because at the end of the day, as Avin says, they consider it 2 different body parts. Yeah, like that's probably kind of like their definition of it. But at the end of the day, it still equals out to be pretty much the same exact thing.
I agree. And, I think that the double tap, I don't understand why that is a negative thing. I think that could potentially be sometimes even harder to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, dude, if the guy has full possession in the end zone, okay, if he has 1 foot down, okay, sure. That's part of the rules. That's always been a part of the rules. But he has enough time in the end zone in terms of having possession and control of the football where he taps his foot twice. How's that not a score?
Yeah, I have no idea, man.
So it's a little blurry there. It's a little bit of a gray area. It's the same thing with the catch rule that's been a problem for years, which I don't think anybody's understood why it's had to been so difficult. But that needs to be something that's looked at, because that's honestly a ridiculous rule if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody were to catch the ball and just hop on 1 foot for 5 yards, does that mean, and somebody hits him and the ball comes loose and hits the ground? Is that not a fumble, or is that an incomplete pass? Because that's just ridiculous. You know what I mean?
No, it is.
Yeah, and so
I know he does. Yeah.
So to me, I think it's a bad rule.
It is. The NFL half the time, I don't really think they even know their own rule book. There's been what's happened with this hip drop tackle. It hasn't even been called one time this year, and it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened multiple times this season, and it's never been called.
Yeah.
So I don't think half the time they know their own rules.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, it's happened before in the past where certain coaches take advantage of certain rules, and then they're like, okay, well, we need to go fix it. I think one was the Mike Vrabel thing over there in Tennessee, where he was allowing the clock to run out or something of that nature, and it forced the other team to take a timeout. And so it was part of the rule book. It was what it was. And so it's changed, and that's no longer there. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets looked at.
Yeah.
But last thing I want to talk about tonight, and kind of get your ideas. Let's go with some mid-year awards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's start off with, we'll have a few. We'll have an offensive, half MVP, a defensive half MVP, and we'll have the special teams, maybe the entire team MVP, and the comeback player / most improved. All right.
I like it.
And and we'll add rookie of the year so far. So let's start off with team MVP. Who's your team MVP for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now?
Team MVP, man. It's a good question. I don't think it's one solidified answer necessarily. I think there's a couple answers I think someone could have if they're going to break it down. But I'm still going to go TJ Watt. He's the best defense player in football. He is on his way to win Defense Player of the Year again. He is the heart and soul of this team. And he is just always there 90% of the time to make a play when it's needed. And he did that Monday night when the Giants were getting a little momentum down the field toward the end. But he is a just super special talent. And without him, it's just the Steelers just don't roll the same. We all know that. Just look at the numbers. It's just it's not. So yeah, it is definitely TJ Watt.
Yeah, I agree with TJ Watt as well. You know, he's even when he doesn't get the sacks, he's had impact plays with the forced fumbles, you know, against I think it was the Raiders, you know, where he was able to be impactful. You know, without him, you're absolutely right. And the defense is something different. The offense, you know, has to pick up the slack in past years when he hasn't been there and they haven't had the ammunition to do so. Maybe this year maybe isn't so much the case, but man, things without him would be so much harder. And I think that Steelers wouldn't have a winning record without him. And so for me, yeah, the team MVP would be TJ Watt. Now let's drop down to the offensive MVP of the halfway of the season. Who do you think, or who is your offensive MVP?
This is, I think, an even better question. Jeff, that's a good choice. I like that. So I said I don't think it's necessarily a one answer thing. Offensive MVP, though, this might be a little ticky-tacky, but I'm going to kind of take off of what Jeff said. I'm going to say the offensive MVP right now is the quarterback room. I think what both quarterbacks have been able to provide for this team this year has been very, very important. They've both have been able to do things that none of their quarterbacks the last 3 years have been able to do. I think Justin Fields deserves a lot of respect for what he did for the first 5 or 6 games of the season. I fully believe in him and his career and future, whether that's here or somewhere else. I do think him sitting is the best thing for him. I said that coming into the season. It got to the point where it was like, okay, we're playing him. I thought it was really important for him to, at that point, just end up being here and for the Steelers to develop him. But I truly do think for the long term of his career, him sitting right now is the best thing for him. But what he was able to do, really being the main factor of their offense, the first 5 games he started, or 6 games, I think. And then Russ coming in and being able to give a whole nother element as well to this offense has just been gigantic for this team. So that's going to be my answer.
You know, for me, this is a very difficult one as well. You know, I agree with everything you're saying about the quarterback room and how they're doing. But to me, if I had to pick one person, it'd be hard to pick one of those quarterbacks because, you know, obviously they're both didn't play the entire year. And we have limited action with Russ. We have a good amount of action with Justin, but it wasn't all good. You know, down the line, he started to get a little bit shaky. So to me, I mean, although the quarterback room had its huge component into why the Pittsburgh Steelers were successful this year without, you know, giving up the turnovers or anything like that. But even at that, they lost the game where they won the turnover battle, and it didn't work out. So to me, I would have to go with Dan Moore, man. I think Dan Moore has been the most consistent offensive line player on the team right now. I think Zach Frazier probably would have been my team MVP and my rookie of the year had he not gotten hurt and been out for the last few games. Broderick Jones on the right side has been a liability. There's been a lot of players in and out of the lineup. The only one that's been the most consistent as far as availability has been Dan Moore. You know, I think he's picked it up quite a bit. He's been that solid guy on the left side of the line. And I never thought I would say that, you know, that Dan Moore would come in and be at this point. Now, obviously, if Russ continues in the rate he's going, and once Zach Frazier comes back, you know, and he plays the remaining portion of the season, I think that will play a huge role in it. But at this point, at the halfway point, given how much time Frazier's lost, which was like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that, it wasn't a whole lot. I would have to stick with a surprise team offensive MVP with Dan Moore.
Yeah, that's definitely a surprise answer. That's a respectable answer. Najee getting no love. Oh, dude, we love Najee here, man. We're just not. It's just kind of a one answer. That's all.
So with Najee, the reason, I considered him, but he had some struggles as well throughout the season. And to me, I just think that Najee's been, Dan Moore's been the most consistent player on the
Yeah.
team,
Yeah.
week in, week
That's
out.
fair. That's a respectable answer. I respect that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
So on the defensive side, now let's do a little bit where you can't choose a player that you've already chosen.
Mhm.
So a different defensive MVP for you.
Yeah, since we can't say TJ, since he's already won team MVP, I'm going to go Cameron Hayward.
Yes, he's done well.
Cameron Hayward has been somebody a lot of fans weren't quite on the boat with him getting a new contract this offseason. I was okay with it long as it made sense, and I think it has. He has been at age 35. This isn't one of, how do I want to word this? He's having a great season, but he's had better seasons. But he's having a great season in the sense where a lot of different defensive statistical categories he is at the top in. And he has stayed healthy, and he has proved a lot of people wrong that, as he said himself, he is still a top 3 defensive lineman in the NFL. He's playing like it right now. And aside from TJ Watt, he's going to be my pick because he has shown that this year that he still is full go, and he is just a huge uplift to our defense, the fact that he's playing at such a high level still at age 35. And it reminds me of Calais Campbell a little bit. Calais Campbell's on his 3rd or 4th team now. I think his 4th team, and he's still playing at a high level on the defensive line, and he's 37 years old. Cam Hayward being 35, still playing or being able to have a season that's been one of the best ones is pretty remarkable on his end, so he's my pick.
Good deal. It's a respectable pick. I think that, looking at how he's come around, it's definitely a refreshing sight to see with Cam Hayward being a guy that is being disruptive again.
Mhm.
But for me, it's going to be a new guy to the team. It's going to be Deshaun Elliott. I think that what he has done this entire year has been super consistent. He's made splash plays. He's been in places where, like, he's making tackles in the backfield when he's not supposed to even be up in the line of scrimmage, but he dissects the plays so well. He sees what's coming. I mean, that's only a result of how much film study he must be doing. And so, to me, Deshaun Elliott has been he's been a great pickup, alongside with Minka. And I'm going with Deshaun Elliott for this one. Now, special teams MVP. I think we're both going to have the same one, but who is your special teams MVP?
Can we say Danny Smith?
That would be nice if we could say Danny Smith. He might be the coach of the year so far.
Yeah, he might be. Special teams MVP. Actually, I think there's maybe a couple guys you can put in there. But it's got to be Miles Kilbrew for me.
Really?
Yeah. I think that he has been this is my opinion, and I can't base this off of necessarily other teams, special teams guys.
Mhm.
But he has truly been these last 4 years. Maybe one of he's got to be one of the best special teams players in the NFL. I mean, he was an All-Pro.
Yeah.
And he is always making himself known one way or another in the special teams aspect. And especially on punts, he is always having his hands in there. And I truly think that he's an underrated part of this team. And it seems like he's been on this team for a long time now. But he's just somebody I can't pick against. I've always have had a lot of respect for him and his game. The fact that he is the guy that has just always been consistent for them in terms of block punts, in terms of big plays, of getting the offense in good field position. Um, he's somebody I can't pick against in that end, and I really appreciate that. And stuff like that goes a long way for me because that stuff is just always so overlooked.
Oh, for sure. He has a he practiced his craft quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's been no surprise
Yeah.
that they've seen him after practice, during practice,
Yeah.
doing practicing diving towards a blocking of a punt.
Mhm.
It's a solid pick for the this year's half
Yeah, I just
season.
went a different direction. That's all I did. I'd have the same pick as you, but I wanted just to go in a different direction.
Yeah, I obviously am going with the Wizard of Boz.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
100%. Like that's the obvious answer, and I
it
agree with
is.
that. But I just wanted to give love somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. For me, Killebrew is up there. I think he's the captain for a reason. I
I
think
think
a
he does
close,
happen, yes.
I think a close second. I think Afton also mentioned it, is Carlos Waitman. I think he has come in, but when it comes for Boz, he has been clutch, not just as a kicker, but he's also had a situation where the punter went out and he had a punt. And not only did he have to punt, but he downed the
Yeah.
person there 45 plus yards or whatnot. And then in the same game, he had a receiver be the holder, and he had to knock in a field goal there at the end. And so, to me, I think, like you said, it is obvious, but
Yeah.
I do think that if you could choose one, it would probably be Danny Smith, because the special
Mhm.
teams this year has been elite. There is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. Blocked punts, blocked field goals. There should be more. The Minka thing shouldn't have
Yeah,
been counted.
100%.
And
And that night, the ball didn't lie either, by the way, because they got it again later that night.
yep, that's true. You try. I think it was Joey Porter a long time ago when I think it was against the Colts, and he was yelling out, "Cheat that." That's what I was yelling at when we blocked the second one. I was like, "Cheat that."
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that the special teams is pretty amazing right now.
Yeah,
Now,
they're playing the best I've ever seen them play.
yes, sir, they definitely are.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, the Boz pick's obviously the right pick. Like I 100% on board with that. There's no denying that or debating that's the pick. I just wanted to spread the love. That's all.
There, for sure. Like I said, I thought we were going to be the same person, but
Yeah.
yeah. All righty. So next one, Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the year. I feel like for me on this one, really isn't much of a thought too much for me. I have to go Zach Frazier. When he's playing, he's been such an impressive player. You can go back and watch him every single week. He is definitely somebody that is giving you a lot of confidence that he is a guy that's going to be the franchise center. And it's fantastic to see because they have had so many center issues the last 4 years. And the fact that Zach Frazier's come in right away and has already made an impact as he um, has been very fun to watch. And I don't think that when you watch the game, you really get to see the impact that linemen are ultimately bringing. So I encourage anybody to go back and watch some of his stuff because the guy's just a mauler,
Mhm.
and he has been such a huge plus for them in terms of running the football, in terms of um, being able to keep this offense moving. And I'll give credit to Ryan McCollum. He did an admirable job last week stepping in, but it's got to be Zach Frazier. He's been very impressive, and he's just hopefully the center that we've all been waiting for.
I agree. I also went with Zach Frazier as well. You know, Zach he's going to be like you mentioned, he's going to be our center for a while. Um, I thought about this. To me, there was like a three-headed race here between Zach. He clearly had a couple of steps ahead, but behind him, I thought were two guys that could have gotten it this year, and that was Beanie Bishop and McCormick. Now, with McCormick, I think he's the guy that's been, he earned kind of like the starting gig or into position when, say, Molly was out, when he was battling with Spencer Anderson and he started to get the rotation. Then he eventually took over for that position. So he's
Mhm.
already surpassed some of the players that have already been here a year or two.
Yeah.
And, when James Daniels went out, he went in and, it was not necessarily rough to begin with, but he played well, but I think he's played even better as the season progresses. I'm excited about the Steelers' interior offensive line. These are some young guys that I think might be with the team for a while. Even McCullum could be a guy that I see be a huge depth piece for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a few years. But yeah, no, Zach Frazier, 100%. But when it comes to your comeback player of the year, your
Mhm.
most improved, so to speak,
Mhm.
who do you have there?
Good question. Comeback player of the year. Mm, we can only say one guy, right? Or like we can't say
Yeah,
repeated guys either.
correct.
Okay. Comeback player of the year for me. For me right now, he's had limited time, but it's gonna be Russell Wilson for me.
Mm.
Russell Wilson has only started 2 games, but in those 2 games, in those 2 games have been 2 of the best games of his career in quite a while. And the way that this guy has gotten brought down, and I've always been a Russell Wilson fan since he got drafted and beat out Matt Flynn for the Seahawks starting job in 2011 or 12, whatever year it was.
Mhm.
The way that this guy has been brought down and has been talked on negatively and disrespected while he was with Denver is a freaking shame
Mhm.
because he's a great man. He's a great teammate. He's a great leader, and he always has been. There might be some people that have maybe didn't see eye to eye with him in Denver in terms of teammates. He can be a little corny, but he is the definition of a guy you want leading the show at quarterback. And
Agree with
what
you.
he's done these last 2 games, he has played in a way that I don't think there's one person out there can sit and say that they expected Russell Wilson to play the way that he's played. You can sit and say you believe Russell Wilson still could play and had juice left in the tank, but not the way he's played. Russell Wilson's played at a super high level and has played at a level of where it's bringing back memories of the Seattle Seahawks. And I truly believe that Russell Wilson gives his team the chance to play in an AFC championship, this version.
Mhm.
And though he's played 2 games, I don't care. He's my comeback player of the year.
There you go. There you go. I think that by the time this season is over with, he could be a leading that race for me. You're absolutely right. He got disrespected quite a bit, but for me, my comeback player of the year is another guy that got disrespected quite a bit. A lot of people were in his business about his money and how
Mhm.
much he should make, and that's none other than Cam Hayward. He was struggling last year. There was a lot of questions about his
He would have
age.
been my pick, Daniel, but I already picked him.
I know, yeah. I know that was going to be your pick when you said we can't pick somebody else. But yeah, Cam Hayward is my guy. He is definitely shown up that the contract that the Steelers got from him was very team friendly because he is a force to be reckoned out there once again. And without him, I think that that rushing defense would be in a world of hurt. And so I think that he's going to be my guy for the comeback player of the year. I think by the time everything's said and done, you're absolutely right. Russell Wilson was disrespected. There's a lot of people that have had to eat crow this
Mhm.
last couple of weeks or
Mhm.
couple of weeks, days. I'm sorry. One of them being Mark Schlereth. He's
Yes.
come out. He ate
Yes.
some
Big
crow.
Russ hater. Very
Yes,
big Russ hater. It's because he's a Broncos fan and he played for Denver, so he just hated the way that Russ played there.
exactly. He had to
That's
come
it.
back and
Yeah.
his show
But
says
hey,
he was
at
wrong.
least he owned up to it.
That's true. That is true. And there's been a lot of guys, even Colin Coward.
Colin Coward, Stephen A. Smith,
Mm-hmm.
those are other guys as well. So the national media has kind of been turning their heads a little bit with that. Um, But yeah, I feel comfortable picking him, and I truly feel like he's going to lead this team to a good playoff run at this rate right now.
I do too. The Steelers have had the defense. I think once Martavius Adams gets back, that's going to solidify a little bit more of that up front. I think Keanu Benton he's had a lot of good moments, but I think he's had some that weren't so great. I remember a game in particular. I want to say it was man, I can't think of the team, but the opposite team was the opposition was, within the 3 yards from the end zone and about to score, and the offensive lineman just pushed him off the line, pushed him about 4 yards in the end zone. And so there's been those moments where those things have happened. And I think he's going to get better with time. He's still fairly young. And, with guidance from Cam, and I think Loudermilk has actually played quite a bit better than what he's played in the past. If they can solidify that run defense, and maybe perhaps with Cam Sutton coming back, maybe they're not going to be running that single high safety and not disguising anything, because I think that also plays a huge role. I know Beanie Bishop has played pretty good couple of games here, but I think a lot of the reasons why the Steelers aren't disguising anything, why they're playing just single high safety towards most of these teams, is to protect him a little bit. And, I can see, in certain situations as he improves, that Cam Sutton would get in some of those positions and potentially could we could see a different, more what's the word I'm looking, exotic looking defenses versus what we've seen thus far.
That'd be nice.
So,
That'd be nice. I hope so. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing them both kind of come in with both kind of come back, I guess, and see if the Steelers do anything differently on that. Tomlin Coach of the Year, I think you could make a case. I think Dan Quinn from Washington. I think those are two guys at the top of my list.
I find it shocking that Tomlin
and I would love to see Tomlin win Coach of the Year. He never has.
Yeah, he's never won it. I don't even think he's been in the nominations very close. It's always been a run between some new guy or that's doing something crazy offensively.
Right.
And so it would be fitting for this year. I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. I think in terms of not familiar with the rest of the league, it's there's really nobody. I don't know if Denver maybe for some reason makes a big run. I don't see that happening though. I don't think that they're there yet to do that. Trying to think NFC West. I don't see anybody there. NFC East, no. I think right now Dan Quinn, Tomlin, I think those are two guys you could put up there. Unless that there's a team that really makes a run the next 8-9 games. I mean, you could say even Dan Campbell, sure. Yeah, you could even say him too, Jeff. How does Stefanski go from Coach of the Year to put John Lyon as the Browns? That's the Browns, man. That's the Browns. If they were smart, they would keep him and continue to stay committed to a head coach rather than continue to go through one every 3 years. But that's the Browns for you.
Now they'll probably end up getting Schwartz in there promoted. I bet you he's the next coach there.
Who?
Their defensive coordinator, Schwartz.
Oh, Schwartz becoming head coach?
Yeah. He used to be a head coach before.
Yeah.
He's their defensive coordinator now. I can see him end up taking that role.
Yeah, he was with the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
But he sucked there. He's always had a good defense, though.
That's well, the Browns tried the offensive guru mind in Stefanski, and it got him a playoff win. With Baker Mayfield. I bet you all the Browns fans are really upset about that.
If I was a Browns fan, I'd be pissed just because you had. If I was a Browns fan right now, I would be pissed off because you actually have talent on your team. Mm-hmm. And the team decides to go all in to Deshaun Watson to try to change the culture and landscape of the franchise. And it reset the entire quarterback market. And now there's a high possibility that they just move off of him. And now you're going to re-enter pretty much a rebuild phase because now you're back to square one where you've pretty much always have been. So
and you owe him some money for the next 2 years.
Yeah. So I'd be super pissed if I was a Browns fan, 100%. And I do not think this is the year to draft a quarterback, by the way. I think that I never write off quarterbacks, but I think as things are, there's some upside to these guys, but there's nobody that really sticks out as guys that are you can kind of 100% hit the target on. Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Shadir Sanders, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, like it doesn't. Those type of guys just don't move the needle for me too much in this draft. I think the 2026 draft will be a lot better, but I really do feel like the Browns are going to take a quarterback.
They very well may. You know, the quarterback that I'm liking in the future is one out of Texas here is Archie Manning.
Mhm.
That guy
2026, Daniel.
Yeah. The Steelers should, what's the saying? There was always something like tank for two or something. Planning for Manning.
I like it. I like it.
We need to start planning for Manning, you know, pick up some of these draft picks, make sure that we're in position to trade some away, because I don't think we're going to be close enough to the bottom there to be there to draft him. But, you know, to make the right moves, you might be able to get yourself in position for that. So planning for Manning it is in 26. By then, you know, he sits behind Russ a year or so. Russ gets to about 38 and then he takes over. So there you go. There you go.
That's it. That's it.
Any final words there, Nathan?
Just give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Afton, thank you for putting that out there. You guys can follow me where I'm at right here at In Hindsight. Daniel and I, we just share our channels in terms of our podcast whenever we go live. Instead of flip-flopping, we just air it on both because we have that option to be able to do that. But everybody that has put their thoughts and opinions out there, we appreciate you guys. We see it. Even if we don't acknowledge it, we still see it. So it's always good to see all you guys in here, Afton and Jared Devil and Claude and everybody. So Concepts, Jaime, thank you for coming in. Let's see, who else am I missing? George T, good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Jeff, thank you. Jerry, thank you. Steelers Almighty, thanks for coming in, man. I think there's a couple other ones down here. Just want to give a shout out on. Ollie, thanks for coming in, man. I know you kind of came in toward the end. Mark Cunningham as well, thanks for coming in. Everybody who is going to watch this on Daniel or mine channels, we always appreciate your support. We'll be back next week since Steelers are on a bye. We'll be back next week and we'll talk about the Washington Redskins, as I like to still call them, because that name's a lot better. Washington Commanders Steelers game. We will talk about that, give our thoughts, our predictions on that. And just a little heads up, I'm feeling confident about that game. So I'm looking forward to covering that one.
Me too. I can't wait till we talk about that. I can't wait to watch that game. It's like, you know, we saw this offense really perform for 2 weeks. It's kind of like a tease, and they're like, all right, now you got to wait 2 more weeks to see him again. So I'm waiting. I'm excited to see our offense. I'm excited to see the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Manning to the Bears. Yeah, that's the last thing that they need to do. Oh, my goodness, man.
It is possible. Well, guys, I hope you guys had a great night. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Tom, sorry you got in here a little bit late, but hey, go watch from the beginning. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. So that being said, we're out of here, guys. Thanks.
See you guys.
Till next time.
Thank you all.